Thank you. I have to admit, I've only been in this field for 5 years, so it's a little intimidating to be here, amongst all these legendary presenters. But very honored to be here. So thank you very much to Well Trust for having me, and I hope you guys find some of the work we're doing really exciting. So as they mentioned, we're into drones. I'm from Ocean Alliance. We're actually based out of Gloucester, Massachusetts. We work out of a historic paint factory building right in the harbor. Gives us great access to the Atlantic humpback whales and Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. We're the organization founded by Roger Payne back in 1971. And we like to think that over the years, we've always been sort of trying to pioneer new methods for marine mammal research. It's gone through many different shapes and sizes over the years. But as you'll see in these slides, right now our focus is on drones and how drones can be used in novel ways for marine mammal research. So I like to start with why we're focused on whales. Why are whales important? So a couple years ago, there was an IMF article that came out dubbing whales as nature's solution to climate change. And the reason they say that is because whales actually play a really surprising role in carbon capture. And they do this by, they're feeding, they're migrating, they're bringing all this nutrients up from deep water up to the surface, and they poop a lot. And what that's actually doing is fertilizing phytoplankton, which is providing the majority of the oxygen that we actually breathe. So if we have healthy whales, by extension, we have healthy oceans, and by further extension, we have healthy humans. So it is sort of in our self-interest to be protecting whales and finding ways to study the health of whales. But from the boat, this is what we see when we look at a whale most of the time. This is a blue whale in Mexico. And it's hard to tell if that whale is healthy. The best way to do it usually is to get like a physical sample from the whale. Like if you go to a doctor and you're doing a health checkup, they're not just kind of looking at you and trying to guess, what's wrong with you. They'll probably take a blood sample or a biopsy or something. Drones have helped in the ways of, expanding the view of that whale. So now we can get these topside views. We can see this is doing like a body condition assessment. How long is the whale? How fat is the whale? And it's opening up this world of, other forms of data collection, other ways to try to assess the health of the animal. But we're still missing that physical biological sample. But with the sort of expansion of drones since sort of 2012 is kind of when drones were starting to take off, Ocean Alliance jumped on that and we created our Drones for Whale Research program. And we had sort of three main focus areas when we started this program. The first being the top right, non-invasive health assessments. Is there a way to, study the health of this animal non-invasively? Like I said earlier, creating novel tools and methods for marine mammal research. And then finally, also democratizing science. And the way we do that is we want our tools to be easy to use, replicable, affordable. And when we come up with a new method, we make everything openly available so that researchers can try to also use our method for their own research. So going back to that first one, non-invasive health assessments, that brings us to our dear SnotBot. And as the name implies, this is a drone for collecting whale snot, or more technically, exhaled breath condensate. And this was our solution to collecting these physical samples non-invasively from an animal. So whereas, you might in the past have taken a biopsy, we were wondering if there were ways to collect similar types of, health data without the animal even knowing that we're there. So how SnotBot works is pretty simple. It's a drone with some Petri dishes Velcroed on. We take off from a boat. We go find a whale, in this case, a sperm whale. We get a nice wet sample, bring the drone back to the boat. You'll see these Petri dishes covered in whale snot. We take them off the drone, they go into the boat and they get processed. All of the snot gets squeegeed off the dish and pipetted into a tube that gets frozen and later off sent to a lab for analysis. So what is actually in the blow samples? there's three main areas that we analyze for different sort of health aspects on the whale. The first being DNA, which is sort of simply who's who of the whale. Is it male? Is it female? What is sort of the genetics of that animal? The second one being hormones, which in the whale world, some of the most interesting ones would be stress hormones or pregnancy hormones. And then finally, microbiome, which is sort of the one we've done the deepest dive into so far. And that's all the different species of bacteria living, in this case, within the respiratory system of the animal. And how can we use that as a potential diagnostic tool or a health indicator of these animals. So over the years, since 2015, we've done 10 different species and over 600 blow samples across the world in different oceans. Here's just a clip from each one. So starting with the southern right whale, gray whales, an orca in Alaska, humpback whale, I think this one was in Dominican Republic, blue whales in Mexico, fin whale in Stellwagen Bank, sperm whale in the Azores, sei whale in the Azores, a Brutus whale in the Azores, and lastly, a bottlenose dolphin down in South Carolina. And what we've been able to do with this large sample set is sort of a broad comparative study on the different microbiomes we're seeing from different species. So all this is showing is the differences between different species microbiomes in all the samples. So what's important to see here is that different species sort of group individually together. They have somewhat distinct microbiomes. And interestingly, the sperm whale, which is our only toothed whale species in this sample, was drastically different from the baleen whales. So this was some really interesting sort of first large baseline data set that we were able to get. And then, so that was in 2021. And then the year after, we started to go the opposite direction. Instead of doing this broad analysis, we wanted to do repeat sampling on individual whales that we had information on in Stellwagen Bank. So they're very well-known humpback whales. All of these samples are humpback whales. And just to try to decipher these for you guys real quick, on the left is all of the different samples. But so what we're looking at is they're called ASVs, amplicon sequence variants, and all that is the DNA sequence of all the different bacteria that's in there. And it's used as a proxy for the species of bacteria. So there's over 5,000 different ASVs in there, so 5,000 different species of bacteria. On the right is when we ignore everything that's in the water and everything that's in the air. So we take controls for that. And then that leaves us with just the species of bacteria that are in the blow. So that's what we think is the actual microbiome of the whale. And what we see when we pull everything out and we're just looking at the blow microbiome, these different colors are different individual animals, and they start to group together into their own little clusters. So individual animals, from our findings, seem to have individual microbiomes. And this is really interesting because when we know these animals really well, we know their life history, and now we can make their microbiome part of that data set of their life history. This could potentially be used as a sort of diagnostic tool for if there's something unusual about a sample that we gather when we get it back from the lab. We could further investigate that animal and see if there's something causing a health issue with that animal, or if we can find some kind of cause for that outlying microbiome data. So this has been really interesting work, and this is what we're continuing to do in the next year, more of these focal follows on these animals, and combining it with all the other data we're getting from the drone, from body condition of the animal, the life history of the animal. So that's sort of SnotBot. And then what we'll move on to next is more focused on the bottom left, these novel tools and methods. And a little sneak peek in the picture there is our newest sort of novel tool for marine mammal research, and that is tagging. So I'll explain what's going on here as we jump through the slides. So back to this image. Again, when we look at this whale from the surface, in this case, we're looking at behavior. Is this animal feeding? Is it socializing? Is it traveling? What is it doing? We can't really tell from the surface, so we sort of need to get beneath the surface with the animal. And the way we do that is by putting on these suction cup attached behavioral tags. On the right, there is a blue whale feeding on a patch of krill. So the traditional method of getting these suction cup attached tags on is pole tagging. And as you can see here, in some cases, it can be dangerous, it can be stressful for both the whale and the humans. And like Ed was alluding to with this entanglement, they're using very similar poles. They're trying to extend their reach. They don't want to be close to the animal. So we took on the challenge of trying to innovate on this and see if there was a way we could do this from a drone-based deployment method that would reduce the need to make these close boat approaches. So that's what we did. We started 3D printing different tools and methods, and the idea we came up with was, let's let gravity do the work. So we just dropped these tags. This is us testing on, we got a whole bunch of ballistic gel like Mythbusters would, and we towed it on a paddleboard and started dropping on that. It was a great surrogate for like whale blubber. Next slide. And there's two different types of, these are the two sort of most commonly used tags in the research world. There's D tags, which are the small ones, and CATS tags, which are the larger ones. They both collect hydrophone, accelerometer, depth, and it's all sort of combined to basically replicate the behavior of the animal afterwards. And the only difference between the CATS tag, the larger one, is that it has a camera. So we get all that amazing footage along with it. So we came up with two different ideas for how to deploy these from the drone. The smaller D tags has that fin, the lawn dart design you see on the right there, which is basically just to get it to fall straight so that we hit suction cups first. The CATS tags being a larger, heavier tag, our solution is to basically just fly lower and drop it as is. And I'll show you sort of the difference between those two methods coming up. So when we started this, there was only one group previously that had published on deploying tags from a drone, and it was very partially successful. I think out of all their drops, they got one suction cup to stick. So we didn't really know what to expect when we started this, but we went to one of our favorite places, Loreto in Mexico, and big thanks to Jorge, our next speaker, for hosting us down there and letting us work with him. And we decided, let's start with the biggest target we can. We'll start with a blue whale. And turns out it was incredibly successful. So here are the two different tag methods, the drop methods. So on the left, you see the D tag with the fin, much higher up, smaller target, but the D tag is able to sort of fly itself down. And then on the right, the CATS tag, where we fly from much lower and just sort of drop the tag as is. I'm going to speed through some of the rest of this here. This is a video from the camera tag perspective, dropping it from the drone. Imagine, there's supposed to be sound here, but you can imagine the nice suction cup sticking noise when it hits. This is to demonstrate some of the precision we're able to get from the drone. So we placed a camera tag on the whale, and then on the right there is us dropping the smaller D tag in front of the camera tag so that we could see how it attaches, our tag holder releases, and floats for recovery and reuse. So some quick results from this. The benefit, obviously, of a drone-based system is we're able to keep our distance from the animal. So we were able to, in that field test, deploy 20 tags, 21 tags, CATS tags and D tags on blue whales and fin whales. And our average distance from when we launched the drone to when we tagged the animal was 490 meters, so almost half a kilometer. Our longest distance being over a kilometer. And the average time it took us to tag those whales was 2 minutes and 45 seconds, the shortest being 43 seconds. So we're able to keep our distance from the animal and also really minimize the amount of time that we spend near that animal. Our overall success rate from the amount of drops we made to the amount of sticks we got was 58%. And there's us dropping on a fin whale, and fun fact, we're 5 out of 5 on fin whales. So that brought us to sei whales and back to Stellwagen Bank after the success of that first field test in Mexico. And if you know anything about sei whales, you'll know that no one really knows anything about sei whales. In North America, as far as I know, I think maybe 2 had ever been tagged before. And you can see them on the right there, looking like little sardines, just going crazy in a feeding frenzy. From a pole tagging perspective, it's really unpredictable, really hard to get near them, and their backs are rarely exposed. But we were able to tag 10 sei whales in 3 days with the UAV method. And you can see here, after tagging this animal, just seconds later, it's back to feeding. So it's really minimally disturbed by this tagging method. So in the last year, we were able to tag 41 animals, 4 different species, blue whales, fin whales, sei whales, and humpback whales. We've had minimal responses to the tag deployments and really comparable data to the pole tagging, so that they're staying on just as long, they're collecting the same types of data. And then just to wrap it up quickly, as Ed alluded to, the reason we're here in Hawaii, bringing it back to Hawaii, is to test drone-based, using drones in support of disentanglement. And the theme is, again, we're trying to reduce the need to spend time close to these animals in a small boat in stressful situations for both the humans and the animals. So, like I said, reducing number of close boat approaches. That means when in disentanglement, when they do need to make that close boat approach to make a cut or whatever, that first approach is always your best approach, because at that point, you sort of sensitize the animal and things just get more and more difficult from there. And then to that end, we're testing the feasibility of deploying these tools, like these cutting grapples, from a drone. So that's what we're here to do, is this initial feasibility study. You can see some of our first prototypes here, catching lines from my boss, Dr. Ian Kerr, kayaking, and also us, dragging grapples through the water. I wish I had more to share on this, but hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have lots of good testing and development time with Ed and the whole team. And we're really excited to be moving forward with this project. And that's all I have. Thank you. And you can follow us on Instagram at SnotBot.
We have time for a couple questions if we have any.
How long does the camera stay on the tag?
Yeah, so the question is, how long do the tags stay on? Ideally, you'd want them on for a day. At most, I think our tags have stayed on for 30, 36 hours. But a lot of times, depending on the situation and the environment, and you're focused on recovery, you need to recover the tags to be able to get all the data. So you can actually set them with timed releases. So you might just do a few hours, but a lot of times we're trying to aim for a day, 24 hours.
Just a crazy idea, but have you considered dropping sort of a lander on a whale, do the cutting that way, something that would actually hold on to suction?
Yeah, the question is if we've thought about dropping a lander on the whale and doing the cutting from the suction cup tag. We're at the stage right now where we're taking all ideas. So yeah, it's definitely in the exploratory phase, but yeah, we're looking at everything we can.
How do you determine the exact time to drop the thing from the whale?
Good question.
How does the drone know what to do?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we know when to drop the tag? So we're flying for what's called first-person view. So the pilot is seeing what the drone sees, and we use sort of the pectoral fins as our guide, as our sort of like center target. On the screen, we have a big X, so we're aiming for the middle of the X is our target, and it's just an understanding of the whale behavior. So you can see a lot of times a whale will put its pecs out as it's about to come up and take a breath. And you're just waiting to see the back exposed when it's taking that breath and dropping. It's a short time, it's 2 to 3 seconds at most that you have that sort of window. But yeah.